In Great Britain, the mail coach, a postcoach, was a horse-drawn carriage that carried mail deliveries, from 1784. In Ireland, the first mail coach began service from Dublin in 1789. The coach was drawn by 4 horses and had seating for 4 passengers inside. Further passengers were later allowed to sit outside with the driver. The mail was held in a box to the rear, where a Royal Mail Post Office guard stood. The mail coach was faster than the stagecoach, as it only stopped for delivery of mail and generally not for the comfort of the passengers. They were slowly phased out during the 1840s and 1850s, the role being replaced by trains as the railway network expanded. History in Britain. The postal delivery service in Britain had existed in the same form for about 150 years, from its introduction in 1635. Mounted carriers had ridden between posts, where the postmaster would remove the letters for the local area before handing the remaining letters, and any additions to the next rider. The riders were frequent targets for robbers, and the system was inefficient. John Palmer, a theatre owner from Bath, believed that the coach service he had previously run for transporting actors and materials between theatres could be utilised for a countrywide mail delivery service. So in 1782, he suggested to the post office in London that they take up the idea. He met resistance from officials who believed that the existing system could not be improved, but eventually the Chancellor of the Exchequer, William Pitt, allowed him to carry out an experimental run between Bristol and London. Under the old system, the journey had taken up to 38 hours. The coach, funded by Palmer, left Bristol at 4 p.m. on the 2nd of August 1784 and arrived in London just 16 hours later. Impressed by the trial run, Pitt authorised the creation of new routes. By the end of 1785, there were services from London to Norwich, Liverpool, Leeds, Dover, Portsmouth, Poole, Exeter, Gloucester, Worcester, Holyhead and Carlisle. A service to Edinburgh was added the next year, and Palmer was rewarded by being made Surveyor and Controller General of the Post Office. Initially, the coach, horses and driver were all supplied by contractors. There was strong competition for the contracts, as they provided a fixed regular income on top of which the companies could charge fares for the passengers. By the beginning of the 19th century, the post office had their own fleet of coaches with black and scarlet livery. The early coaches were poorly built, but in 1787 the post office adopted John Besant's improved and patented design, after which Besant, with his partner John Vidler, enjoyed a monopoly on the supply of coaches, and a virtual monopoly on their upkeep and servicing. The mail coaches continued unchallenged until the 1830s, but the development of railways spelt the end for the service. The first rail delivery between Liverpool and Manchester took place on the 11th of November 1830. By the early 1840s, other rail lines had been constructed, and many London-based mail coaches were starting to be withdrawn from service. The final service from London was shut down in 1846. Regional mail coaches continued into the 1850s, but these too were eventually replaced by rail services. The mail coaches were originally designed for a driver seated outside, and up to 4 passengers inside. The guard travelled on the outside at the rear next to the mailbox. Later, a further passenger was allowed outside, sitting at the front next to the driver, and eventually a second row of seating was added behind him to allow 2 further passengers to sit outside. Travel could be uncomfortable as the coaches travelled on poor roads, and passengers were obliged to dismount from the carriage when going up steep hills to spare the horses. The coaches averaged 7 to 8 miles per hour in summer and about 5 miles per hour in winter, but by the time of Queen Victoria the roads had improved enough to allow speeds of up to 10 miles per hour. Fresh horses were supplied every 10 to 15 miles. Stops to collect mail were short, and sometimes there would be no stops at all, with the guard throwing the mail off the coach and snatching the new deliveries from the postmaster. The cost of traveling by mail coach was about £1, a mile more expensive than by private stagecoach, but the coach was faster and, in general, less crowded and cleaner. Crowding was a common problem with private stagecoaches, which led to them overturning. The limits on numbers of passengers and luggage prevented this occurring on the mail coaches. Travel on the mail coach was nearly always at night. As the roads were less busy, the coach could make better speed. The guard was heavily armed with a blunderbuss and 2 pistols and dressed in the post office livery of scarlet and gold. The mail coaches were thus well defended against highwaymen, and accounts of robberies often confused them with private stagecoaches. Though robberies did occur, to prevent corruption and ensure good performance, the guards were paid handsomely and supplied with a generous pension. The mail was the sole charge, meaning that they had to deliver it on foot if a problem arose with the coach, and, unlike the driver, they remained with the coach for the whole journey. Occasionally guards froze to death from hypothermia in their exposed position outside the coach. During the harsh winters, the guard was supplied with a timepiece and a post horn, the former to ensure the schedule was met, the latter to alert the post house to the imminent arrival of the coach and warn toll gatekeepers to open the gate. Since the coaches had right-of-way on the roads, the horn was also used to advise other road users of their approach. History in Ireland. A twice-weekly stagecoach service operated between Dublin and Drogheda to the north, Kilkenny to the south and Athlone to the west as early as 1737, and for a short period from 1740, a Dublin to Belfast stagecoach existed. In winter, this last route took 3 days, with overnight stops at Drogheda and Newry. In summer, travel time was reduced to 2 days. In 1789, mail coaches began a scheduled service from Dublin to Belfast. They met the mail boats coming from Port Patrick in Scotland at Donaghadee, in County Down. By the mid-19th century, most of the mail coaches in Ireland were eventually outcompeted by Charles Bianchini's countrywide network of open carriages, before this system in turn succumbed to the railways. History in Australia. Australia's first mail coach was established in 1828 and was crucial in connecting the remote settlements being established to the larger centres. The first mail contracts were issued and mail was transported by coach or on horseback from Sydney to the first 7 country post offices: Penrith, Parramatta, Liverpool, Windsor, Campbelltown, Newcastle and Bathurst. The Sydney to Melbourne overland pack horse mail service was commenced in 1837. From 1855, the Sydney to Melbourne overland mail coach was supplanted by coastal steamer, ship and rail. The rail network became the distributor of mail to larger regional centres. The mail coach met the trains and carried the mail to more remote towns and villages. In 1863, contracts were awarded to the coaching company Cobb & Co to transport Royal Mail services within New South Wales and Victoria. These contracts and later others in Queensland continued until 1924, when the last service operated in Western Queensland. The lucrative mail contracts helped Cobb & Co grow and become an efficient and vast network of coach services in Eastern Australia. Royal Mail coach services reached the peak in the later decades of the 19th century, operating over thousands of miles of eastern Australia. In 1870s, Cobb & Co.'s Royal Mail coaches were operating some 6,000 horses per day, and travelling 28,000 miles weekly, carrying mail, gold, and general parcels. The horse-drawn coaches were originally imported from America and were known as the Concorde coach design. This design was a thoroughbrace, or also known as a jack-style coach, characterized by an elegant curved lightweight body suspended on two large leather straps, which helped to isolate the passengers and driver from the jolts and bumps of the rough unmade country roads. Soon Australian coach builders, using many of the Concorde design features, customized the design for Australian conditions.